Right now we are discussing integrity in research, scientific research. Let me just briefly recapitulate what we discussed in the last class. So I posed some difficult cases before all of us, and the cases were suggestive of some information which came from machines, and then on the basis of that machine information, the scientists were supposed to make certain decisions, and in different cases they made different decisions, almost contradictory decisions. Some followed the information given by the machine in letter and spirit, and the others wanted to avoid that. So when we get any information, when we get any data from any source, how we are going to evaluate that data and how we are going to respond to that data. And we have seen that there were opposite responses despite the fact that machine suggested something. So what is it which makes us to adopt an opposite course of action, though the situation is almost the same? So that was the point of discussion. One may work under pressure, because of that the response is different, or the response varies. One may have adequate rationality, one may be reasonable, one may be prudent to have one kind of response, and in different situations maybe different kind of response. So if you look at the pressure part, the prudence part, and the, let us say, rationality part, they are very much human concerns, right? So when we utilize certain data, it is our character, it is our nature, it is our approach or attitude or disposition which is operational behind this evaluation of data and then responding to that call of the data. And what could be an appropriate response towards a situation? For that, we have seen that the professional bodies associated with different professions provide broad guidelines, what you call professional codes, what you call code of ethics, right, or code of conduct. So we have also seen certain basic codes of conduct and the moral values which are foundational to those codes of conduct. And because the codes of conduct are provided by a registered professional society, it has a legal effect also. Besides having the foundation of morality, the professional guidelines have legal effect. And from that perspective, we started exploring that what could be a relationship between what we call morality and what we call legality. The relationship between moral principles, moral norms, and the legal rules or laws, right? And with that question, we saw a small story from the Greek mythology. The story was having the protagonist, Socrates, behind the whole morale, but the disciple of Socrates named Xenophon wrote the Socratic insight, the Greek thinker Socrates' insight, in a dialogical form. So Xenophon chose two characters, and it appears that one of the characters was the Socrates, let us say representative of Socrates' ideas, or the way Xenophon looks at Socrates' ideas, we can understand in both ways. And just to inform you that Socrates had a very beautiful dialogical style of engaging the young minds in discussion. So he would raise questions and then seek responses from the people. He would meet young minds, he would meet revered personalities, politicians and bureaucrats and judges, and he would try to get response on certain basic values with the intention that how they understand, how they make sense of those values. And Xenophon raised this very interesting question that how laws are formed and what you call something law. So what are laws? And there we have seen several responses considered. In one case, the majority sits together and decides on certain matter and agrees that, okay, these should be the laws. So what are laws? Laws are what is agreed upon by the majority, and those laws were meant to be implemented in the society and others were supposed to follow that. Then we have seen that it may be a kind of proposal from a minority, not from majority. So a handful of people or maybe a monarch decides that what should be the laws, and that becomes law for the society. And then we have considered one more option, that is it really then the case that we are looking for anything else other than the power? We want to remain in power, and therefore anyone who is powerful wants to continue in power, and therefore whatever is essential to sustain, whatever is essential to remain in power, the people starts designing laws, and whatever they say, that is considered as laws. And then the question came that if it is the guideline given by the powerful, and if the powerful happens to be a dictator or someone who has a kind of negative attitudes, someone who has this violent attitude, or who is disposed to behave in a violent way, in a repressive way. So then what would be the laws? Then of course one would say that the laws are given by the powerful and they want to behave in certain ways in the society. Another interesting question was raised, then what is lawlessness? If laws are nothing but the words of the powerful, and the powerful, if they are repressive, if they are violent, then what is chaos? What is lawlessness? And then interestingly, the discourse reaches to this point that it is very difficult to decide, therefore, what is law. If you consider the situation in the whole world, in fact, you find all the responses are implemented in this or that country, right? So this was again a kind of difficult situation, that if something which is considered as legal, which is considered as lawful, is not maintaining the peace in the society, not being able to do justice for the people in the society, if the laws are not in the welfare of the society, if they are in the welfare of the few, then is it really the notion of law, or it is lawlessness or violence, right? And this has generated another curiosity. Then what could be the foundation, what could be the basis of laws? What are laws? We have seen that in the prevailing situation, all types of laws are there, right? And we have seen different viewpoints that, okay, something is called a law depending on different situations. And therefore, when we say that laws and lawlessness or chaos are converging at certain point, there is a convergence point where you really see no line which can be drawn between what we call law and lawlessness, then the very notion of law is under threat. So what will save law from threat of this kind, lawlessness? It should not be identical with what we call chaos or lawlessness. So we came back again to the basic moral principles, which will support or which will contest against any so-called law, right? So if law is founded on moral principles, then certainly say that it is law, and we know that laws are designed for the welfare of the society, welfare of the people, in order to ensure justice and all these values in the society. And if there is any violation, then certainly the justice must be done. So this was the brief overview what we did in our last class. Today I wish to have some more proposals for your consideration, and this proposal must be seen from a perspective. Remember, whatever we are discussing, it is a contextual discussion. So we need to always look for a relationship between research and publication ethics. Whatever we discuss, it need to be linked to that, right? So whenever we discuss anything, please keep this always in your mind, that it is with reference to research and publication ethics, and let us try to understand these values from that perspective. It doesn't mean that the things which we discuss, they don't relate to other spheres of our activity, but that will take more time if we go into that. But let us just focus on the main purpose for which we are gathered. So let me share the file so that you can see some text also. And I believe that you don't just see the text, but also keep on noting down. So if you have any curiosity regarding the previous discussion, we can take up that. So in the first half, what I thought that we will discuss something, certain things which I propose, and if you have some curiosity in your mind, and then in this second half we will see the presentation of the group second. And I don't know if I have put that file in the Google Drive, but doesn't matter. We will read the whole article, and I hope the group second is ready for that. So maybe we will spend some 35 to 40 minutes on this discussion, and then we will move on to the presentation and discussion on that. Can you see the file? Dikh raha hai?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So कल हम लोगों ने ये बातें देख ली थी, preservation of dignity and interest of the profession, working in the best interest of the society, maintaining the best possible conditions of service and high standard of professional and personal conduct, dealing with justly and impartially, working for higher individual goals, and striving for excellence and working in unison. This we have discussed as foundational values which underlie any professional code, right? And it relates to basically every human activity. Let us focus on our own present concern, that is ethics with respect to science and research. So these two concepts are, let us say, the main points for discussion today. ये दो concept को आपको background में रखना है, intellectual honesty and research integrity. Now, as a researcher, we are supposed to propose something. We are supposed to function or conduct experiment, etc., on our proposal. And then whatever findings we have, we are supposed to report back. And then that reporting is meant for evaluation, self-evaluation, as well as evaluation by the others. So if you like, you can have an acronym out of this: proposing, performing, reporting, evaluation. So what do you say? PPRE. Let us hope it doesn't become a nonsense kind of acronym. PPRE or PPRE कह दीजिए, just for convenience. So what we are proposing in our research, remember, whether it is related to science or management or humanities, in fact, management, social sciences, these areas are generally recognized as pseudoscience, right? And then we have literature or any other social sciences. So there we are going to propose something. And what we are going to propose in our research is certainly related to the, let us say, human reality. Okay. And consider this concept nature in that broader way, where it is not just the natural environment, it is the integral nature, where you have the whole thing. So nature means the reality as such, where you have human beings, non-human beings, and other inanimate objects. So in our proposal, we usually raise fundamental questions about nature. Those who are in sciences, engineering, they can easily see the nature as being independent of our being, but that is a very problematic understanding. I will explain how it is, but let us first consider, when we consider nature as being distinct or separate from us, this is a problematic attitude. And therefore, I propose a holistic viewpoint for this concept nature, where human being is not excluded. So when we raise a fundamental question in our research, we raise this question with respect to nature. And we don't take it in a very wide way, so we focus on certain dimensions of nature. Okay. And it is that perspectival, or let us say dimensional approach towards nature, which separates us from one discipline to the other. But remember, this separation is not in the sense of watertight kind of separation. It's a kind of situation where you have dovetailing, right? Dovetailing means sciences are not in opposition to any other discipline. all disciplines are complementary, right? And therefore, when we conduct research or propose any question with respect to our research, this possibility of having various, let us say, nodes to link the other interdisciplinary areas or to link to other disciplines must be open. If we are keeping it a very plastered kind of let us say packing, it would be a very problematic way of presenting our research or proposing our research. So it should have a kind of opening. And again, I can draw a picture, but I don't know how far it will help. But let me just try. When I see research thesis, so I want to see something like that. Suppose एक दिन हमने आपको picture draw किया था. Suppose we want to support this, and or let me just consider that this is the thing which you want to propose. Now you are going to start with a very general kind of, let us say, idea. So this is your introduction, let us say. Don't go by the visuals, but just try to understand what I am trying to communicate. So you just go on building up the structure on this, right? You can just think, I think pine tree और ये जो हमारा Christmas tree होता है ना, उस टाइप का कुछ आप सोच सकते हैं. So it has all these layerings, right? And it just goes on, and let us say finally we reach to a state where you have something just to decorate, right? जैसे वो केक पे चेरी लगाते हैं ना, that is the cream and the most, let us say, attractive part in your research. But you are developing it by keeping all these nodes open, right? So sometimes you may have a little broader nodes, but then it has to be balanced so that it doesn't lose the picture, right? तो कभी कभी कुछ ऐसा हो सकता है where you are just extending your issues this way. So what are these? These are the openings which are oriented towards the other disciplines, right? So in preparing the proposal, we are supposed to keep this kind of opening where people can see that yes, there could be link with that. So this I consider a kind of visual which you may think that, okay, research visuals could be something like this. And let me go back. So we are going to raise fundamental questions about nature. This must be our agenda. And then since we are working in different professions, in different areas, these areas can have direct or immediate effect on the lives of people across the world, or it may not have that kind of direct effect, but it may have some kind of, let us say, soft or what we say, a promising insight which can be used for the well-being of the people. The thing is that our research is certainly going to impact the lives of the people. This is more true in the cases of science and technology, where you are supposed to ensure the safety, health, and well-being of the people, right? So this is the prime concern behind our scientific and technological research. And since our work is going to affect the life of the people, it means we have greater responsibility. So this needs to be in the background when we propose anything. And while conducting our research, when performing different tasks associated with our proposal, we need to have some other kind of concerns, right? We are going to deal with the natural elements, we are going to deal with the machines, we are going to deal with the human beings, we are going to utilize the already proposed knowledge, research articles, books, etc., or reporting, etc., right? So we are going to deal with several factors in our research. And then depending on our performance, we are going to collect the data and analyze it and present it in the form of reporting. And then it is not just reporting, but also being aware of its pros and cons. So evaluation. Now, when we sincerely perform this whole task, it generates a sense of achievement. Now, this sense of achievement can be seen in two ways. A sense of achievement as an individual, where it fetches individual recognition for you, and therefore you are motivated to take something which is very fresh, which is not yet done. Now, how to decide that it is not yet done? We need to have extensive literature review, right? As in the other, I hope, research methodology course, you might be dealing with this method, that how to conduct extensive literature review, etc. So I'm just referring to that part. I hope it is done there. And therefore, this proposal which we are going to have for our research has got this kind of freshness, some kind of freshness. Either it is in terms of providing new information regarding the activities and the nature, or it is a kind of improvisation in the already available technology, etc., or it is going to generate more insight into the understanding of nature, natural forces, or human relationship, etc., right? So this novelty, this kind of freshness in our proposal is the promising point which will bring individual recognition for us. If we are just doing something which doesn't involve this component, then what is going to happen? It will not bring a good individual recognition, and therefore the sense of achievement at the individual level would be weakened, right? And then the other way of having sense of achievement is associated with what we call collective achievement. So as a member of that professional community, you contribute to the existing status of knowledge, and that contribution generates a satisfaction, right? And in doing all these things, it seems that as if the research is very demanding, right? So to have a sense of achievement is obviously demanding, and that may generate a reasonable kind of pressure, and sometimes very problematic kind of pressure. And the pressure may be felt at personal or professional level, right? Now, under pressure, let us say, or under some kind of feeling of obligation, if you want to be moderate in understanding pressure, feeling of obligation towards research activity, we make certain decisions. Decisions are considered with the designs for our investigation. So how to design our investigation, our research plan, our performance activities, right? And then how to present their results in an intelligible, logical, and acceptable form. And then this presentation is not a solitary activity, right? There are people associated with your work, your supervisor, co-supervisor, the lab assistants or library people, etc. Right? So, and all the teachers with whom you are going to interact. So then in that situation, we all are colleagues, right? We all are colleagues in that. And therefore, it is also important how to interact with colleagues. And we need to have clarity of thoughts on these matters. And if we fail on any of these counts, then what is going to happen? Our decision would be problematic. It may lead to waste of time or resources. It may lead to slow advancement of our learning, and even it may lead to a very problematic thing which we call professional and personal, compromising the professional and personal trust or undermining these things, right? So here we are, of course, in a very demanding situation. और इसमें क्या क्या है कि कुछ तीन बातें हमने ऐसे ही फिगर आउट किया कि if I propose these three things before you for the beginning, then we can see how we are going to relate these things with our activities. So first is that we all have an obligation to honor the trust that that is reposed by the society in us, right? Colleagues, other people. So we have an obligation towards that trust, which is committed to us. And second, we have obligation towards ourselves, right? We have certainly our individual life, our personal life, and family life, right? So we have obligation towards these personal situations, right? So we have to take care of our own health, mental and physical well-being. We have to take care of the people who are surrounding us. And as I said, we are going to be in 5 or 4 years association, so it is a long time, 5 years plan if you like, and therefore it requires a very considerate and careful engagement so that we maintain our personal health, mental and physical health. We also maintain our relationship with the family members, taking them in confidence that if I fail to do something, please see that I have some other obligations, so I have to make balance, etc., between different roles. And the third thing, that the results which we gather through our findings, through our research, that will influence the society. And therefore, it is an obligation on all of us as researchers towards the society, right? To act in the ways that serve the public. So this need to be in the background of every research engagement. And yesterday or that in the last class, we have seen certain values. So nothing to remind you, just consider that we are going to apply those values in our everyday life. And when we consider what is valuable, there are only two tests which are proposed, right? One is that whatever we think valuable, it must be naturally acceptable. If it looks like a burden, then we have to reflect whether it is naturally acceptable or not, right? And then with that reflection, with that understanding that it is naturally acceptable, we have to live up to it, right? So experiential validation of the values by following them in our life. So these two things are very important. Unless we satisfy these two things, we are not going to be a very harmonious or good researcher. Now, I'm going to propose certain values for your consideration and see how these values are understood generally in the common population. And if there is any confusion in the common population, whatever is proposed here, we need to see whether the understanding in the common population or in common parlance satisfies these two demands of natural acceptance and experiential validation, or there is some conflict there, right? So let us try to understand. We have been talking about trust, respect, and all these important values which are essential for any social activity like research, any group activity, team activity. So let us try to see first this value, what we call trust. And time and again, when you go through any literature on research and publication ethics, this term is repeated, right? Trust. So what is trust? So the proposal which is here is the feeling. Remember, all these values which we are going to propose, that is all related to our feeling. That means these values are felt realities. They need to be realized at feeling level. We need to feel, right? So when we consider trust, the trust is the feeling of assurance that the other person wants my well-being, my happiness, my prosperity. And this is something which is natural. I want my own well-being. I want my own happiness. I want to see others happy. And there is absolutely no doubt. Okay, let me just write here. I want my well-being. This is one concern. I want my well-being. I want the well-being of the other. The other wants his or her well-being. 4 बातें मैं लिख रहा हूँ, आप इस पे विचार कीजिए. The other wants my well-being. So I wish to have your reflection on these 4 things. Tell me, are you comfortable with all these 4 in saying yes? So regarding the first, so I hope there is no doubt about it. या किसी को लगता है कि आप अपना वेलबींग नहीं चाहते हैं? अगर किसी को लगे, नो वाला आंसर लगे, तो आप बताइएगा. आई वॉन्ट द वेलबींग ऑफ द अदर. आप दूसरे का भला चाहते हैं कि नहीं चाहते हैं? क्या लिखें यहाँ, यस या नो? आप माइक से बोल सकते हैं या चैट बॉक्स में रिस्पॉन्स कर सकते हैं. आई होप यू आर लिसनिंग. सुन पड़ रहा है ना?
यस सर.
ये जो सेकंड है, सेकंड पॉइंट का रिस्पांस आप एस मानते हैं. थर्ड पॉइंट के रिस्पांस में If I write yes, any doubt? And if I write yes, so if any of you have any doubt particularly regarding this, क्या कहेंगे आप? And here the other includes everyone in fact, excluding you. बताइए, comfortable हैं? कोई दिक्कत नहीं है? Making है, always make. Well-being you can understand in terms of happiness and prosperity किसी सेंस में. मैं शॉर्ट में लिख देता हूँ. I always make myself happy and prosperous. What do you say? बताइए, मैं लिखते जा रहा हूँ इसमें yes या no में क्या लिखना है? The other always makes him or her. So let us spend some 5 minutes on this, on your reflection. Regarding the first, you said yes, second yes, third yes. Regarding last one, someone may think that the other wants my well-being. Not all others, only few who are your close relative, maybe parents or whom you love or who love you. So here there may be some doubt, and also with the fact that we often hear people saying that he wants my destruction, he is my enemy, he wants कि मैं उजड़ जाऊं. We often hear people like saying like that. But what about the natural acceptance? The natural acceptance which you accept in your case. If you are comfortable with the first one, I want my well-being, and if you are comfortable with I want the well-being of the other, you don't have any doubt, then you cannot support this one, because it is a matter of wanting. Basically it is a matter of intending. ये intention है जो first यहाँ से यहाँ तक लिखा है. This is our intention. We intend to ensure our well-being, right? So I want to have my well-being, I want to have the well-being of the other, and that is naturally acceptable. I don't feel any kind of problem in accepting these two. And then the other are also like us, so they want their own well-being. We think that yes, that is fine, but then the other wants my well-being. Here we don't feel much comfortable. Some discomfort is there, right? And this is based on wrong kind of understanding. If you say that I want the well-being of the other, correct in your case, then what is the point of considering that the other doesn't want your well-being? What is the rationality behind this consideration कि दूसरा हमें उजाड़ देना चाहता है? If it is naturally acceptable to me that I want to serve the happiness and prosperity for others, I want this sincerely, others are also like me, then what is the point of considering that the other wants my harm, other wants to harm me? And here you see, I usually take this very popular example that if any thief takes away your belongings, let us say in a train or in any public place, do you think that the thief wants to harm you? Or take very extreme kind of cases, do you think that the terrorists want to harm innocent life? Is it that their intention? We cannot justify, right? It is unreasonable, and it is rooted in a wrong understanding. What is the wrong understanding here? We doubt the intention of the others. This is the last one is basically doubting the intention. Intention का मतलब चाहना है. आप चाहते हैं, आप अपना भला चाहते हैं, आप दूसरे का भला चाहते हैं, आप ही जैसा दूसरा है तो आप उसके बारे में ये कैसे सोचते हैं कि वो आपका भला नहीं चाहता? क्या रेशनैलिटी है इसके पीछे? दिखेगा नहीं कि कोई रेशनैलिटी। एंड देन ट्रस्ट इज द फीलिंग ऑफ एश्योरेंस दैट द अदर वांट्स माय वेलबीइंग। तभी तो ट्रस्ट होगा। जब हम किसी पर ट्रस्ट करने का मतलब क्या है हमारे, कि ये बंदा हमारी भलाई चाहता है, ये बंदा हमें नुकसान नहीं पहुंचाएगा। अगर ये नहीं है तो ट्रस्ट नहीं होगा। और हम देखते हैं कि वी हैव ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट बिकॉज ऑफ नथिंग बट आवर ओन problematic understanding. What is the problematic understanding here? This you can get by reflecting here. I always make myself happy and prosperous. You say, no, I can't make myself happy always because I lack resources, I lack competence. I don't have competence to make myself happy and prosperous always. हरदम खुश नहीं रह पाते हैं ना, दुखी हो जाते हैं। तो दुखी हो जाते हैं इसका मतलब कॉम्पिटेंस नहीं है खुश रहने का। Then similarly, I always make the other happy and prosperous. नहीं, ऐसा तो हमारे पास टाइम नहीं है कि हम सबको खुश करना तो बिल्कुल पॉसिबल ही नहीं। कैसे ऐसा हो सकता है? दूसरे को हरदम खुश करना क्यों पॉसिबल नहीं है? तो कहना आई डोंट हैव कॉम्पिटेंस। इफ आई हैड एनफ ऑफ मनी आई वुड हैव डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड and there would not have been any poverty, there would not have been any deprivation, no hunger, nothing, right? But I don't have resources, I don't have money, I don't have enough food to feed everyone, so I lack. Similarly, the other always make him or her happy. ऐसा भी नहीं, दिखता नहीं है, वो भी दुखी होते रहते हैं दूसरे भी, और दूसरा हमें हरदम तो ये जब कहते हैं दी अदर ऑलवेज मेक मी हैप्पी, नहीं रखता है, तो हैप्पी नहीं रख सकता है। मैं दूसरे को हैप्पी नहीं रख सकता, मैं अपने को हैप्पी नहीं रख सकता, क्योंकि मेरे अंदर कॉम्पिटेंस की कमी है। अब जब ये लास्ट वाली बात आती है कि दूसरा हमको खुश नहीं रखता, तब हम यहाँ कॉम्पिटेंस की बात नहीं देखते हैं कि द पर्सन इज नॉट कॉम्पिटेंट टू मेक मी हैप्पी, ऑलवेज हैप्पी। हम क्या सोचने लगते हैं कि उसका इंटेंशन ही बुरा है, वो हमको खुश देखना ही नहीं चाहता है। And this is the whole trouble. In fact, this is the whole trouble in a family life, in a social life, in a national life, and life at world level. This is the whole trouble. एक कंट्री दूसरे कंट्री को सोचता है कि ये हमें उजाड़ देना, भारत सोचता है कि पाकिस्तान हमें उजाड़ देना चाहता है, पाकिस्तान सोचता है कि ये तो हमें फूटी आंख देखना नहीं चाहते, राइट? इंटेंशन पे डाउट हो रहा है। And that is something which is very unnatural to our being, and therefore we are living unnatural life. Trust is the feeling of being assured that the other wants my happiness and prosperity. The other doesn't want to harm me. तो आप इंडिविजुअल लेवल से लेकर के कंट्री लेवल पर देख लीजिए, दुनिया भर में अरब कंट्रीज सोचते हैं कि अमेरिका हमको उजाड़ देना चाहता है, हमें देखना चाहिए। फिलिस्तीन, इजराइल एक दूसरे को सोचता है कि वो हमारे अगेंस्ट है, वो हमें चाहता ही नहीं, मतलब वांट के लेवल पे कहते हैं कि फिलिस्तीन चाहता नहीं कि इजराइल हैप्पी रहे, इजराइल चाहता नहीं कि फिलिस्तीन हैप्पी रहे, इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, सीरिया, लेबनान, दुनिया भर का। एंड फॉरगेट अबाउट ऑल दीज बिग थिंग्स, लुक एट आवर ओन फैमिली लाइफ. Within our family, we see that not all the members of the family wants to make me happy. ऐसा हो सकता है. It is not universal, but in some cases, yes. And the moment we go outside of family, then the other is now stranger, right? The other is a stranger. स्ट्रेंजर हो गया तो फिर हम सबसे पहले क्या कहते हैं, उसको एकदम शक की निगाह से देखते हैं. इस शक का मतलब क्या है, उसके इंटेंशन पे डाउट कर रहे होते हैं कि ये हमारा शोषण करना चाहता है, ये हमें उजाड़ना चाहता है, ये हमारा सुख नहीं चाहता है, ये हमारा भला नहीं चाहता है. फैमिली में भी होगा ऐसा, फैमिली में भी हो सकता है और फैमिली के बाहर भी हो सकता है. And this is what we call trust deficit. And it is based on a wrong understanding that the other does not want my well-being. And how it can be proven wrong? अगर आप ये कहते हो I want the well-being of the other, तो the other भी तो दूसरा I है, वो भी तो एक I है ना, वो भी तो सेल्फ है, वो भी तो एक पर्सन है. I पे आपका कोई कॉपीराइट नहीं है ना. मैं भी आई यूज करता हूं, आप भी आई यूज करते हैं सारे. तो आई वांट द वेलबीइंग ऑफ द अदर is the assertion true of each of us. And if this is true with each of us, what is the point of thinking this last one in a negative way? What is the rationality? The problem is associated with the competence, and we all have different degrees of competence. We vary in our competence. We do not vary in our intention. Each of us has intention, good intention towards the other, towards oneself and the other. Trust deficit कहाँ होता है? This is the fact, right? फैक्ट कैसे हमने आपको शो किया कि आई वांट द वेलबीइंग ऑफ द अदर, और दूसरा भी एक आई ही है ना, तो वो भी यही सोचेगा, उसको नेचुरली यही एक्सेप्टेबल है. तो ओवरऑल द अदर वांट्स माय वेलबीइंग, ये तो इट विल फॉलो फ्रॉम देयर, राइट? बट देन वेयर इज द इश्यू? द वे आई एम नॉट कॉम्पिटेंट टू मेक माई सेल्फ हैप्पी और द अदर्स हैप्पी और always making others happy. Is it not the case that other is also not having competence to make me always happy or himself or herself happy? So when it comes to evaluate my response towards the other, I go by competence that I don't have competence. But when it comes to the evaluation of the response of the other, we go by intention, कि इनका intention ही बुरा है. And that's the whole trouble, in fact, at every level, whether it is personal relationship, professional relationship, or national relationship, or international relationship. And therefore, humanity requires a serious concern, serious reflection on that. And there has to be a continuous discussion on this. Unless it happens, there won't be peace and harmony in the society, in the world. So Trust is a natural acceptance, and we can live in trust. We don't have that competence deficit. Agar competence deficit hai, then what happens? The moment we recognize that I have less competence, then it is my responsibility to learn from the others. And if you think that you have better competence, then again it is your responsibility to make the others also learn and make them competent. So instead of considering ourselves as complementary, we are landed up in considering the others or ourselves as competitors. So instead of complementary, we consider competitor. And then we are into the race of competition, right? And therefore, the whole lot of trouble. So it is all associated with our wrong understanding of the situation, the concepts, etc. And accordingly, we have problematic behavior. Then respect. Normally, we consider respect as salute or some huge exchange of physical goods, etc. That is not respect, basically. That is something other than respect. It may be just a kind of business. Respect is basically right evaluation. I respect you when I rightly evaluate you, whatever you are, whatever competence you have. And unless we rightly evaluate, we are not going to help each other. जो ये आपस में टांग खिंचाई हो रही है, इसमें क्या है, ये right evaluation नहीं है. Either we have over evaluation, or we have under evaluation, or we have otherwise evaluation of the other. And that leads to the whole of trouble, right? So we are not respecting each other. But don't we want respect? Yes, we want respect. We want to be trusted. We want to be respected. And that is natural. We don't require any other input for being trusted or for being respectful. We feel that, yes, हम तो trustworthy, हमको सब लोग माने, ये चाहते हैं, हमको रेस्पेक्ट करें, ये चाहते हैं. तो जब ये चाहते हैं, देते क्यों नहीं है? वो भी दूसरा भी तो चाहता है, तो देते क्यों नहीं है? तो देते इसलिए नहीं है कि हमारे अंदर कॉम्पिटेंस की कमी है. लेकिन जब दूसरे की बात आती है, दूसरा क्यों रेस्पेक्ट नहीं देता है, तो कहते हैं वो नहीं, वो चाहता ही नहीं कि रेस्पेक्ट करे हमारा. वो हमें हमको ट्रस्टवर्दी मानता ही नहीं है, चाहता ही नहीं है ऐसा, राइट? So because we have wrong understanding of respect, then we go for position. जो हाई पोजीशन पे है उसको सैल्यूट मारेंगे, जैसे पोजीशन से नीचे बस खत्म, काम खत्म. अगर कोई फायदा पहुंचाने वाला है तो उससे हम अच्छा रिलेशन रखना चाहेंगे, और जैसे देखेंगे इनका हालत पतली हो गई तो रिलेशन खत्म. अगर कोई हमको नुकसान कर सकता है तो हम उसको रेस्पेक्ट करते हैं कि ना करे नुकसान, और अगर कुछ नहीं कर सकता है, ये हमारा क्या कर लेंगे, राइट? दिस इज ऑल बेस्ड ऑन रॉन्ग काइंड ऑफ इवैल्यूएशन, एंड देयरफॉर वी ट्राई टू गेट और गिव रेस्पेक्ट आउट ऑफ फियर और ग्रीड. लोभ या लाभ के वश में होकर हम रेस्पेक्ट लेना या देना चाहते हैं, एंड दैट्स द होल ट्रबल. Respect is basically right evaluation. Any other kind of evaluation will lead to problematic relationship. Then affection, बड़ी बात करते हैं इसकी. affection, the feeling of being related to the other, दूसरे से related feel करना. और relationship किसके किसके बीच में होता है? person और person के बीच में होता है. Person you can think as, let us say, the software which is in the body. Okay, so relationship between the software in me and the software in you. It is not between my body and your body. It is not between software in me and body in you, and not the vice versa. So affection is the feeling of being related to the other in terms of that software relationship. If I consider my software and your body, this is not affection. It is infatuation. If you consider your software and my body, then again it is infatuation. It is not affection, right? So we don't feel related to other because a relationship is always between equals. And what is equivalent in me and you? It is the software part, right? Which we call person. मरने के बाद वो चला जाता है, कहते हैं ये उसका बॉडी है, राइट? तो जो भी है जो चला गया उसकी बात. जब हम किसी बॉडी को सैल्यूट कर रहे होते हैं तो वो बॉडी को सैल्यूट नहीं करते हैं, जैसे मिलिट्री में होता है, डेथ हुई तो तिरंगे में लपेटा, और किसको सैल्यूट कर रहे हैं? उस पर्सन को सैल्यूट कर रहे हैं जिसने अपने लाइफ को सैक्रिफाइस कर दिया, राइट? So we have confused understanding regarding affection, therefore a problematic relationship, and that leads to many more problems. Care is another value, which is the feeling of responsibility and commitment for nurturing and protecting the body, our own body and the body of our relative. Which relative? ये blood relation और इसकी बात नहीं है. Anyone, right? We all are relative. Relation is always between software in me and software in you, nothing else, right? It is human to human relationship. There is no other concern. So if we get some time, we can discuss that. Okay. Now guidance. Supervisor आप देख रहे हो, supervise हो रहे हो, कोई आपके सबके supervisor हैं, right? So what is guidance? Guidance is the feeling of responsibility and commitment for the development of person, that software, right? By ensuring the right understanding and right feeling in him or her. Okay, so let me just rush. If you have any query regarding that, then okay, time khatam ho. Okay, reverence. Another value, reverence is the feeling of acceptance of excellence in the other. Right? Unless we accept that the other is excellent, we are not going to learn. So this is very true in relationship of teacher and student. Unless you accept that there is some excellence in your teacher, you are not going to learn. It is the very condition of learning from any source that we recognize excellence in the other. Right? Then glory. The moment we recognize excellence in the other, then what is that? We have this sense of appreciation, right? The feeling of acceptance for those who have made effort for their excellence. Glory is the feeling of acceptance of that effort in the other who has made effort for excellence for himself or herself. दूसरे ने जो अपने विकास के लिए, अपने एक्सीलेंस के लिए एफर्ट किया है, उसके लिए हमारे अंदर ग्लोरी का फीलिंग होना. जेलसी होती है जब दूसरा सक्सेसफुल होता है या दूसरे में एक्सीलेंस आता है, तो जेलसी होती है, तो ग्लोरी का फीलिंग नहीं है, उसका अपोजिट है, एंड दैट इज रूटेड इन रॉन्ग अंडरस्टैंडिंग. ग्रेटिट्यूड. ग्रेटिट्यूड इज द फीलिंग ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस फॉर दोज who have made the effort for my excellence. कहते हैं, I am grateful to you. What does that mean? It means that you have contributed to my excellence. You have helped me. You have spared time. You have spared money or whatever for my growth, for my excellence. And then love is basically on all-encompassing value. It is the feeling of being related to everything, in fact. Everything means human being, non-human being, non-material, material, whatever. Normally we have very restricted understanding of love, कि मैं इनको लव करता हूँ, उनसे लव नहीं करता हूँ. वो लव नहीं है, वो कुछ और है, थोड़ा उसको सोच लीजिएगा ढंग से. And this feeling of love is expressed in compassion. Okay. So love is considered as the all-encompassing value in human-to-human relationship, and then trust is considered to be the foundational value. अगर ये नहीं है तो उसके बाद और कुछ होगा नहीं. Now we will utilize all these things by relating it to these concepts, what we call intellectual honesty and research integrity. So let me now request the group second leader, or who is going to present. So in the background of all these values, let us see what we are going to learn. So let me just stop presenting myself, and you keep on noting your questions regarding the discussion which I had, and then in reference to that, what Kamakshi is going to present. So Kamakshi, you share that file. You can present that file and then go through it.
All right, sir. A very good morning to all of you.
So this is related to redundant publications,
Applications.
right?
Yes, sir.
So what does it mean? You just
Yes, sir. So
okay.
first of all, I'll just go ahead and give you a brief introduction of what exactly is redundant publication is about. So we all are aware of the fact that when the articles are in duplicated form, they are considered to be self-plagiarism. So, doing such actions can lead to the acquisition on all the authors from the submission to a journal or the article, and further, the concerned person will be informed, and which further can lead into an internal investigation with certain repercussions that may affect the person's reputation, their duration, or their tenure with the organization. So, redundant publication, thus, is a kind of publication of a journal or article that overlaps with the one that already exists or published in the media. That could be in any form in the media. For example, it could be in the form of print media or it could be in the form of electronic media as well. And this whole process is also known as self plagiarism, as I told you earlier. So, in other words, we can say that when any of the published work or any section of the published work is published more than once, either in the same or any other form of language, is being represented without acknowledging the proper resource, justification, or reference, which further shows that all the findings have been published before. So, the whole process of duplicating the work done by others is known as redundant publications. Now we'll read about what is duplicate publication is about. So a duplicate publication is when an author reuses a significant portion of his or her existing previously published work without providing any sort of proper references. This is termed as duplicate publication. This could include everything from publishing the same work in various publications to just updating a little bit of new data to an already published study. Any articles or paper that has comparable or close comparable speculation or theory, text characteristics, techniques, findings come about and conclusion to an already published article may be referred to as a duplicate article, and in the event that is republished without the information of the auditors, editors, or prior permission, it is called as duplicate publication. So, the creators of the duplicate publication may be the same as in most cases, but it may too be a diverse authors publishing the same articles without information of the initial author. So, academic ethics are breached by duplicate publication practice, which is unfair to authors and also devalues the journal's reputation. And at the same time of article submission, all the journals need the author to testify that the work is unique and is not submitted for publication to any other journal or previously published. Therefore, duplicate publishing or submission is a violation of the author journal license agreement as per the Dogra and Yadav 2010. It is deceitful to have duplicate publication. The subterfuge is done on purpose. Authors discovered authors rarely cite their previous work, apparently because they are afraid of the duplication being discovered and the second manuscript being turned down. Similarly, such authors do not reveal the existence of concurrently submitted manuscript, presumably for the same reasons. So, in the biomedical literature, duplicate publication is very much common and is regarded as an author's dereliction of duty. Here, trust, genuineness, and authenticity are the main cornerstones of a scientific publication. Originality is a key factor in scientific process, and if the authors cannot guarantee it, one may develop skepticism about the article's contents. Therefore, the authors bear the ultimate responsibility for the publication's integrity. The two fundamental policies of awareness and openness can be of help to authors to avoid duplicate publication. To begin, they should be aware of the issues surrounding duplicate publications and be able to determine for themselves whether or not their manuscript falls into this category or not. Second, They should also provide cross references to their own published so that their work should be submit and unpublished data to the new journal in a transparent manner. Furthermore, the editor of the journal should have complete discretion over these matters. Problems arise when the authors refuse to reveal this information and choose to keep it to themselves. So, if the author is unsure about any aspect, he or she should seek advice from someone who is knowledgeable and qualified. One important aspect to understand is that while not publishing will cause no harm, any retaliation for unethical behavior will cause reputational damage, as per NIAC 2009. Apart from the wish to see a brief CV, a high number of publication is viewed as a fast track to promotions and academic advancements. Outside, bibliographics are also used for sanctioning of grants in places where the length of one's bibliography is a selection criteria rather than the quality of one's bibliography. Now we'll read about the what exactly is overlapping publication. It is also one sort of uh, abundant publications. So overlapping publications results when two or more articles have same analysis of same data set or may contain relatively low amounts of new data or alternative analysis compared with the original publication, especially when this is done in such a way that readers are unable to realize that some of the findings have been already published. So the publication with very low to no overlaps helps in finding new findings by generating new data and ideas, which will further lead to scientific progress and always move the research field forward. On the other hand, authors also breach the general copyright policies by presenting identical ideas, data, and text in two different papers. There are many forms of overlapping publication and at different degrees, which will eventually generate numerous low impact papers. Like when authors pose identical questions with distinct data sets, or they will ask separate questions using same data sets. With this view in their mind, authors should decisively consider that by publishing many but separate overlapping publication will going to benefit the scientific community, or it is only because of the self-interest. So such multiple publications may be acceptable if different parts of the study are understandable by themselves and relevant to different audiences. So there are different sort of overlapping publication that we are going to discuss here. So the different forms of overlapping publication which generally occur in biological, ecological, and other fields are first is explaining the identical question by using separate data sets, like when authors publish a scientific paper related to observation of effects of different nutrients on plants growth, and in other paper a study for the justification of the observations. One more example is when authors perform similar experiment in two different locations and publish the findings of two different locations independently. Second, by separating huge data collected into multiple small ones of same system to explain different questions such as data fragmentation, salami slicing, feasible publication. For example, publishing two different papers to evaluate the effects of maternal environment on offspring size and number. Augmentation of already presented data with some additional new data that may not be able to stand on its own. The resulting representation of data is more likely to be conceptually consistent with original data, but it will consist of different numerical outcomes such as figures and graphs. Fourth one is reanalysis of same data is another type of publication overlap, where previously published data can be analyzed by using a novel technique not available at the time of previous publications. Now we'll read about why this occurrence happens, by what are the reasons for the occurrence of the publication overlap. So there are many explanations for generating overlapping publication, which include big projects which have several endpoints, instant submission of primary results without delaying for supplementary data, wish to submit in high impact factor journals with strict limit of pages in order to prove that progress is made to funding agencies for the projects and posing significantly many alternate questions that possibly will not result in a single cohesive paper. So sometimes researchers are also unaware of the idea of overlapping publications or may receive very little to no training about this issue. So, however, we can also suspect the intentional publication overlap, which is many times the end product of researcher want in order to expand their research yield and maximize the publication number by sacrificing their research quality. So in order to not this to get happen in future, so a proper training should be given to the authors or to the researchers so that overlapping should not be done. So potential problem associated with the publication overlap are: ethics of overlapping publications can be questioned by putting overlapping publication into one paper and also leads to consequences to various readers and journals. With the increase in publication of a particular study, more time is required for sorting through many overlapping publications, searching novel ideas and results, and in comparison of different papers that answer similar questions published by same authors. For meta-analysis, publication overlap can create many practical problems, and in excluding duplicate results as well as to identify data which is new and not overlap is a crucial step to avoid chaos. Furthermore, when authors split a huge data into parts to explain identical questions, the different but overlap papers will not provide a single cohesive picture. However, these concerns are extended when earlier overlapping publications are not cited by authors, then convert duplication, which is unethical, occurs frequently in some fields. There are measures to minimize the negative impacts of overlapping publication as authors need to think clearly how they can present their study more cohesively and concisely, either by publishing a single condensed paper or by many overlapping papers. If there is any need of multiple papers, authors should first self-cite their previous work to avoid any type of covert duplication. However, the responsibility in avoiding overlapping publication is primarily on authors, but publishers can give their contribution by making their policies explicit and defining the publication overlap. So, conclusion to this: in order to avoid the overlapping publication, there is need to arrange discussions related to definitions and consequences of the publication overlap for new authors and should be included in university discussions and trainings as well, with the graduate student journal clubs, academic teachings, lab meetings, and over the online platforms as well. We can hope that these discussions will help future scientists to understand and find out debatable cases of overlapping publication in their work, and they will serve better in their fields of research. Now we'll go ahead and study about what is salami slicing. So salami slicing specify to the act of distribute a huge report that might have been described in an individual research article into more modest distributed articles. As such, it implies separating an individual research article to their least publishable unit, with all reports announcing various discoveries from a similar report. A collection of articles are specified to as salami distributions when more than one article covers a similar community, strategy, and examination questions. So, the slicing of exploration that would design one significant article into a few unique papers is termed as salami publication or salami slicing, we can also call it. In contrast to copy distribution, which includes revealing precisely the same information in at least two or more distributions, salami slicing includes separating or dividing a huge report into at least two or more distributions. So these sections are specified to as slices of an research. So when in doubt, all things consider that the slices of a split up to examinations share the similar theories, population, and action. This isn't adequate practice. So the equivalent slice shall never be distributed more than once. So the explanation is as indicated by the US Office of Research Integrity that salami slicing can bring about a bending of the writing by driving the clueless readers to accept that information introduced in every salami slicing, that is, in every diary article, is referred from an alternative subject example. This slants logical data set as well as it makes redundancy that wastes through user time, just as the are of editors and analysts who should deal with each paper independently. Further, it unreasonably blows up the creator's reference record also. There are occasions where information through enormous clinical preliminaries and epidemiologically investigations can't be distributed all the while, or are to such an extent that they address unique and particular inquiries with numerous and inconsensual endpoints. In these cases, it is genuine to depict significant results of the investigations independently. Anyway, each paper ought to unmistakably characterize its theory and be introduced as one segment of a lot bigger examination. So, most diaries demand that creator who either know or suspect a composition submitted for distribution addresses divided information ought to reveal this data, just as in case some articles that may be important for the paper viable. When is salami slicing justified? In the event that a significant exploration project is broad to such an extent that it includes a few examination groups across disciplines. At that point, it is legitimized that there are various distribution to pass on the general uh, effect of the research. For instance, from a program that reviews the effect of medication, numerous examination could be distributed enumerating with the amalgamation of the medication, biochemical systems, symptoms of the medication on various creature models, impacts of the clinical preliminaries, etc. In this manner, separating the information into different examination would assist you with the passing on the ramifications to the correct crowd. Truth be told, as opposed to suggesting that you are empowering salami cutting, your examination could undoubtedly be distributed in high effect factor diaries in the view of its effect. Now we'll read about what is selective reporting. So, when results from scientific experiments are intentionally not entirely or correctly published in order to hide the unfavorable or unacceptable outcomes, this is known as selective reporting. As a result, the results are not repeatable because they were skewed by bias during the analysis and writing periods. So selective reporting is one form of bias that jeopardizes academic research credibility. It is a major contributor to the ongoing science publishing reproductively crisis. The word reporting bias is used in artificial intelligence research to describe people's propensity to underreport all available information. In scientific research, authors could underreport unexpected or undesirable experimental research, blaming them on sampling or measurement error, while trusting anticipated or desirable results despite the fact that they may be subject to the same source of error. In scientific studies, the investigator could be underreporting unexpected or unfavorable experimental findings, blaming them on other factors. Salami reporting in clinical trials. In clinical trials, salami reporting happens when outcome data is collected but is not disclosed, or when the investigators do enormous analysis but only publish the most favorable ones. To see if there was any selective reporting of outcomes or subgroup analysis, we looked at trial protocol that had been reviewed and accepted for the publication in the Lancet. 75 protocols have been accepted as of June 2007, which summarizes available on the Lancet's website. Four of the studies were eliminated because they were not randomized. So we were granted a mission to utilize 64 of the remaining 71. We found published reports for 37 trials after contacting investigators and exploring databases, like which were 50 reports. So we investigated the prevalence of selective reporting of outcomes and per subgroup analysis in trial reports, as well as the concordance between the procedures and the published findings. So for primary outcomes, there was significant variation between the protocols and the reporting in 11 of the 37 trials. In the protocols, we found 64 primary outcomes, averaging one per trial. However, there were 73 primary outcomes in the published papers with a median of two per trial. 5 trials had a primary outcome that was not recorded, and 8 trials had a primary result. The protocol primary outcome was identified as secondary in 2 trials. None of these studies explained whether those results were included or excluded or how their status was changed. Further detected 158 secondary outcomes in the protocols of these 37 trials with a median of 4 per study. We detected 123 secondary outcomes in the published data with a median of 3 per trial. At least one unreported secondary event or at least one new secondary event was found in 32 studies. Only 18 studies had subgroup analysis specified in their protocols, but 28 had it reported. Only one procedure explained why subgroups were chosen. There was no mention of the overall number of subgroups. Subgroup analyses were performed in 11 of the 19 trials with no pre-specified subgroup analysis in the protocol. None of them explained why they are doing these analyses. Protocol publication provides for a comparison of what was planned against what was actually done, which should be possible both during and after peer review. So, while a solution to the issue of the selective reporting needs to be discussed further, the existing framework is obviously insufficient. Now, we'll move forward with the misinterpretation of data. So, what is data interpretation? So, data interpretation is the process through which we can review any data for arriving at any meaningful conclusion. The right interpretation of data gives the meaning of the information analyzed, determines its signification and true implications. Now, what is misinterpretation of data? Misinterpretation of data is reporting the correct data in a deceptive manner. It is defined as to describe the data with wrong interpretation or misunderstand it. For an example of misinterpret is thinking someone said that they would meet you at 9, but in really they said 5. There are large number of ways to misinterpret the data. First one is inadequate domain capability. Domain capability and data expert are very important concepts for the accuracy of data interpretation. If we consider an example of big organization having business professional but they are not expert in data science, generally the data analysts have less level of expertise than that of business analysts processed in the organization. Although they are related with each other, but an unsteadiness between them can cause misinterpretation of data. Carol Abisambra, the founder and the CEO of lead generation consulting firm Votice Services, quoted that the data scientist or analyst person often does not understand the context of variables they are looking at, and that happens a lot in large organizations where people are working in silos. Sometimes omission of important variables cause strange results, which is due to the lack of the domain expertise. Omission of important variables. Even a single variable can misinterpret the data if it is not used properly, and hence misinterpreted data give inaccurate conclusions and sometimes wrong investments is called minefield of using data. Aggregation obscures truth. Unlike aggregation stage can give us a diverse story, and hence it is important to vary the stages of aggregation for better understanding of the result. So it is a good strategy to see whether the trends at the aggregate level hold up. It is said by the University of Tennessee, Cal Gilbert. Before you start collecting or analyzing the data, it is better to ask why sale would vary from location to location, month to month, during times of promotion versus when we don't have a promotion. And what are the potential sources of variations? By doing this, we obtain a list of things which have an impact, and we grouped our data according to different values of those variables. We can determine our pilot program was successful or not with the help of aggregations level. Inferences are of base. So it is important to understand the group from which inferences are being made, because all inferences from the data are conditional. If not, then there is a risk of inferring the wrong properties about a population. If we are not trained in statistical thinking, we will tend to misinterpret the data or the results said by the University of Tennessee, Calvert. How to Lie with Statistics is a very famous book by Daniel Huff on misinterpretation with statistics. So, conclusion to all of this is that in order to avoid the redundancy to happen, one should keep the tracks of all the copyrights of all work that is there, knowing how to transform the copyrights to the general. Therefore, one should adopt the policy of transparency so as to avoid any potential issues before submitting any manuscript or the article. For example, we can go to the editor, ask the editor of the journal about the manuscript if we have any sort of confusion about our work. So authors need to be very careful not to attempt the duplicate publication and simultaneous submission, as these practices are serious violation of copyright laws and can therefore dent the integrity of the scientific literature. They are also viewed as violations of authorial integrity and can show poor characteristics on an author's honesty and scholarly ability. Therefore, it is recommended that authors should study the resources listed in the reference list and read through the relevant case studies so that they are able to understand and follow the ethical submission practices. So, this is all about the redundancy publications. Thank you.
You can at least name those who have associated to write this.
Sure, sir. So, Bhavani, Shakti, Amit Kumar, Kaushal, and Monica.
So let us open this presentation for questions and clarifications. So you can ask questions. I have some curiosities. So shall I begin with?
Yes, sir.
Redundant publication can be understood in several ways. Of course, one of it could be duplicate publication. And then it seems that you have used self-plagiarism also to in an identical sense with the redundant publication.
Yes, sir.
So to me, it appears that self-plagiarism, duplicate publication, and redundant publications, these three expressions are considered in the same sense. But is it really the case? They mean the same.
So they all have a little difference between them.
But here I got this impression that you are using all these three concepts in the same sense, right?
So I was considering the self-plagiarism and the redundant publication. Like it is given that the self-plagiarism could be a form of redundant publication as well.
Yes, redundancy can be understood in terms of, let us say, saying something again and again without any benefit.
Yes, sir.
If you are repeating something in your, let us say, research work itself, in your thesis, if you are saying something again, that is not a harm, but you must have proper justification. Why are you willing to remind this part to the audience, right? But if it is related to publication, then of course, one may consider that I have published an article in French, so I want to have it in Hindi or in English. And if I have, let us say, another version with different translation, then of course it is the demand of copyright laws that I must seek permission from the publisher who has published the original article, and then seek his or her permission for translation, and then again with permission I need to send it to some other place or maybe to the same place, but permission is required. So suppose something is published with permission, it is of course in some sense redundant because you are saying nothing other than cat as Billy, but then you want to have greater audience. Okay, so you are presenting the same thing in different languages, and therefore it cannot be called redundant in a very strict sense, because you are accessing the same information, availing the same information to a greater audience by having it in different ways. But of course, if you are producing the same thing, the same language, and as it is, that too without permission, then of course it leads to what we call redundancy of publication.
Redundancy. Yes.
Self-plagiarism to me is the concept where we are using our previous work without reference to that, as if we are presenting it first time. Then it becomes self-plagiarism. But if I am producing my own work and using it for, let us say, further improvisation or further revision with reference to that, so I am acknowledging that yes, it was published, and if the reproduction is in substantial part, then of course it requires the permission of the publisher, right?
Right.
So it will be called self-plagiarism on the condition that I just present it as if this is my first time, right?
Yes, sir.
That
In
is
which,
my
in which we are like recycling our texts, or we are reusing parts.
Yes. And then one curiosity is related to salami slicing. Now the university has given a rule that you must publish 2 articles from your thesis.
Yes, sir.
So do you consider this a kind of salami slicing or not?
So we can consider it as a salami slicing, because that includes like 2 distributions, like 1 or more distributions. So they have sort of given us the distributions between, like, we have to submit 2 articles.
So what precaution one need to take so that it doesn't amount to salami slicing, considering that salami slicing is a scientific misconduct or problem in publication? क्या सोचते हैं? कोई भी और भी, कोई जरूरी नहीं कि कोमाक्सी की पूरी जिम्मेदारी है, बाकी जो लोग कंट्रीब्यूट किए हैं और जो और बाकी हमारे क्लास में हैं, कोई भी इस बारे में अपना रिफ्लेक्शन दे सकता है। आप सबसे ये उम्मीद की जाती है ना कि आप थीसिस से ही आप पब्लिश करोगे और कम से कम 2 पेपर पब्लिश करोगे इन प्रेस्क्राइब जर्नल, या प्रिस्क्राइब जो लिस्टिंग है SCI, स्कोपस या और भी जो भी ABDC. तो हाउ टू सेव योर सेल्फ फ्रॉम द चार्ज ऑफ सलामी स्लाइसिंग, क्या कहेंगे आप लोग? कुछ सजेस्ट करिए।
हेलो हेलो।
हाँ बताइए सुधीर जी।
हाँ सर, according to in my opinion, as per the university rule, 2 SCI is not considered as Islamic slicing, because Islamic slicing is very special case in which we divide any particular one research data to increase the number of publications or can author and they have they have to publish to
तो आपका जो रिसर्च प्रपोजल होगा वो एक ही होगा ना? आप जो रिसर्च के लिए हाइपोथेसिस बनाओगे वो तो एक ही है, पूरा थीसिस आपका एक ही प्रोजेक्ट है ना, और उसमें से अगर 2 पब्लिश करोगे तो टेक्निकली तो ये सलामी स्लाइसिंग का जैसा लगता है।
Yes, sir, because
we can but we can design different.
हाँ, सुधीर, शक्ति कुछ रिस्पॉन्स कर रही। हाँ बोलो शक्ति।
Yeah, okay sir, okay.
But there should be no subtopics, some subtopics also, no?
राइट।
As far as I am concerned, जैसे मैंने अपने डिपार्टमेंट में रिसर्च देखा है सर, वो क्या करते हैं, वो डिफरेंट डेरिवेटिव्स का रिसर्च लेते हैं एक ही मतलब प्रोजेक्ट में, अपने जो उनका होता है रिसर्च वर्क, और डिफरेंट डेरिवेटिव्स को डिफरेंट जर्नल में पब्लिश करते हैं सर। तो वो तो नहीं कंसिडर किया जा सकता ना सर इसमें।
हाँ, वही मैं क्वेश्चन वही है कि इफ वी आर डिवाइडिंग आवर सिंगल research project in different, let us say, least publishable units and publishing it in different journals or in different sources, how can we save this practice from the charge of salami slicing? Salami slicing is basically understood in this way, that you are dividing the same finding into several pieces, and then just to increase your number of publications, you are doing that.
जी sir.
So it may be due to your personal pressure or professional pressure or university का जो demand है, rule है, जो भी है. But if salami slicing is a problematic publishing practice, then how to avoid that? That is the question. कोई और इस पे बताएगा? अगर आप रूल देखिए तो रूल कुछ ऐसा कहता नहीं है। हम जो एकेडमिक जो पब्लिकेशन एथिक्स की जो बात कर रहे हैं, दिस इज रिलेटेड टू द रिसर्च इंटीग्रिटी बेसिकली। Now, since you are a researcher, you know better that how much information can be imparted, can be shared without generating any kind of misconception or any kind of miscommunication. Because if you publish your article and I am going to read that, so I will have a tendency to consider that as an independent, solitary piece of research. And since I don't have, let us say, access to all other associated things from where you have published, there must be adequate indication in that unit of publication so that I can have some reasonable, let us say, reasonable insights into the other things which you have done. Right? And therefore I will not be misled by your that piecemeal work publication by by considering that piece, if I can understand what your substance is, then it may not be called then salami slicing. If I have given that kind of indication, that kind of, let us say, opening in my publication. So it's like examining an atom, the behavior of an atom, and then thinking that what could be the behavior of molecule. And you know that in philosophy, we have a huge discussion on this part and whole relationship. But the analysis of part must be in such a way that it generates the understanding of whole. If it is not leading in that way, if it is not generating that kind of understanding, then of course I would say that yes, it can be called salami slicing, because I may misread it, I can use it not the way you have intended, but in my own ways. And there have been great mistakes, in fact, not by ordinary researchers, but by great scholars. They have done it. They have made this mistake by reading pieces of works of others, misrepresenting it, making a bold assertion based on their misrepresentation. And then when they presented, the other says, the original author says that I did not intend that. Right? So as a researcher, we need to maintain integrity. That means we have to show that yes, I am trustworthy. I am trustworthy in my reporting. What I am saying is, in fact, the truth, and this is not the truth in any deformed way or in a misleading way. It is the truth, and it must have enough indication that anyone who sees the nature of atom must be able to assess or must be able to understand what could be the nature of molecule. Okay, so if the publication is of that kind, then I think it should not be called salami slicing practice, right? अदरवाइज तो सारा आप जिंदगी भर वर्क करते रहिए, एक ही थीम पे वर्क करते हैं और जो भी फाइंडिंग पाते हैं आप पब्लिश करते चले जाते हैं, वो सारी चीजें फिर सलामी स्लाइसिंग के उसमें. इसीलिए सलामी स्लाइसिंग इज नॉट कंसीडर्ड एज ए चार्ज, इंस्टेड इट इज कंसीडर्ड a kind of problematic practice, and we can have ways to address that problem. Am I making sense? हाँ कुमार
जी. हेलो.
हाँ बताइए.
सर, क्या हमें ये परमिशन मिलती है कि मान लीजिए अगर हमने रिसर्च करा और हमने एक पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक पर एक रिसर्च करा है, हमने उसको एक जर्नल में पब्लिश करा है, तो क्या हमें ये परमिशन मेरे हिसाब से तो नहीं होती है ना सर, कि हम वो उस टॉपिक को दूसरे जर्नल में भी पब्लिश करें या उसको सेंड करें दूसरे जर्नल में भी?
वो जब आप परमिशन मांगोगे तो आप बताओगे कि आप क्या करने जा रहे हो, तब वो देखेगा कि आपको परमिशन देना है कि नहीं.
सर, ये क्या जर्नल पे डिपेंड करता है कि ये रूल ही है कि वो रिजेक्ट हो जाएगा?
नहीं, वो जर्नल टू जर्नल, जैसे कुछ जर्नल्स हैं जो कह देते हैं कि हाँ ठीक है, जैसे आपने बहुत सारे आर्टिकल इधर उधर पब्लिश किए और फिर आप उसको एक बुक फॉर्म में पब्लिश करना चाहते हो
जी,
तो उन आर्टिकल्स के लिए आप लिखते हो पब्लिशर को कि मैं एक किताब छापना चाहता हूँ और उसमें ये सारी चीजें शामिल करना चाहता हूँ, तो वो अलाउ कर देता है.
ओके सर. तो सर ये अनैतिक में नहीं आएगा सर?
नहीं, अनएथिकल नहीं है, लेकिन वो चीज आपको वहीं एक्नॉलेजमेंट में सीधे आपको सबसे पहले वही बताना होगा कि दीज थिंग्स आर ऑलरेडी अपीयर्ड हियर एंड यू हैव टू गिव प्रॉपर रेफरेंस एक्सेट्रा. आप कोई किताब उठा के देखिए जो वास्तव में कलेक्शन ऑफ आर्टिकल्स है जो ऑलरेडी पब्लिश्ड है, तो देखिए अच्छे ऑथर की बात मैं करता हूँ मैं इसीलिए मैं एडवाइस करता हूँ जस्ट गो बाय द स्टैंडर्ड रिकॉग्नाइज्ड ऑथर्स.
जी सर.
तो जो हमारे बड़े बुजुर्ग करते हैं उसको हम करेंगे तो उसको कोई कैसे कहेगा कि ये अनएथिकल है, राइट?
ट्रू सर, ट्रू.
जो वृद्ध व्यवहार है, जो एल्डर्स, हम गलत चीजें भी एल्डर से सीखते हैं ना, लेकिन अभी हम जो ये डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं वहाँ ये सेंस कर रहे हैं कि क्या कुछ गलत हो सकता है. और हमको उस ट्रैप में नहीं जाना है. In the maximum possible way, we need to avoid that.
Hello,
सर.
हाँ.
sir. One more point about Islamic slicing. Suppose
हाँ.
there are limits of words in the very many generals, so we cannot put extra amount of work in that particular general. So that's why we have to divide our work in number of papers. So it is considered under the category of Islamic slicing.
प्लेजरिज्म तभी होता है जब वो ऑलरेडी पब्लिश्ड है और उसको आप कहीं रिप्रोड्यूस कर रहे
plagiarism
हो
नहीं.
विदाउट रिकॉग्निशन.
प्लेजरिज्म नहीं सर, मेरा पॉइंट है कि एक मैनी जनरल्स में वर्ड्स की लिमिट होती है. सपोज 8,000 वर्ड्स, 10,000 वर्ड्स, और
Right.
थीसिस जो डॉक्यूमेंट है वो अराउंड 100 to 200 पेजेस का है. दैट मींस देयर आर मोर देन 20-30,000 वर्ड्स.
Yes.
तो लिमिट की वजह से भी कभी कभी हम अपने पेपर को 2 सेगमेंट 3 सेगमेंट में तोड़ते हैं, तो वो इस्लामिक स्लाइसिंग में कंसीडर नहीं कर सकते या कर सकते हैं.
हाँ, जो तोड़ते हैं वो इस तरह से ना तोड़ें कि किसी काम का न रह जाए.
हाँ, मतलब डेटा ऐसा ना
जी.
होना चाहिए. वही मेरा पॉइंट है कि इनसफिशिएंट डेटा नहीं जाना चाहिए. अगर आप सेगमेंट
Yes.
में तोड़ रहे हैं
Yes.
तो एक सेगमेंट में आपका एक हाइपोथेसिस कंप्लीट होना चाहिए.
बिल्कुल.
ये आपका फिर इस्लामिक स्लाइसिंग नहीं होगा ना.
यस, इसको सलामी स्लाइसिंग नहीं कहेंगे. अच्छा, दूसरी चीज जो मैं सोचता हूँ, जैसे आप थीसिस पार्ट से ही पब्लिश कर रहे हो और एज इट इज जैसे वहां पब्लिश किया वैसे ही उठा के थीसिस में रख देना, और आप मान लो रेफरेंस भी दे रहे हो कि हाँ, आपने ये वहां पब्लिश किया है और एग्जैक्टली वही स्टेटमेंट वगैरह सब थीसिस में आ रहा है. मतलब कॉपी पेस्ट है, आपने पहले जो पब्लिश किया उसी चीज को थीसिस में ला रहे हो, तो इसको क्या प्लेजरिज्म कहेंगे? क्या आप सोचते हो?
ये सर सेल्फ प्लेगरिज्म में आएगा सर.
सेल्फ प्लेजरिज्म में आएगा. सो हाउ टू अवॉइड दैट?
सर इसमें 2 केस हो सकते हैं कि या तो हम इस पर परमिशन लें कि हम सेल्फ प्लेजरिज्म अलाउ है, अदरवाइज हम इसको रिफ्रेज करें, पैराफ्रेज करें.
Yes, paraphrasing is interesting idea to avoid any kind of self-plagiarism, because when we exactly take sentences or words we are of course taking, if we are taking phrases or sentences completely from your already published work, then it can be only in the form of quotation, but you cannot quote the whole chapter in your thesis, right?
Yes.
So therefore, even if we have published somewhere, there has to be some extra work, in fact, to reformulate and appropriate the things so that it fits in the structure of your thesis, and you need to change some amount of reformulation, and somewhere where you are taking exactly the statements with quotations. So this way I think we can avoid self-plagiarism charge in that way. Normally हमारे यूनिवर्सिटी में तो जितने थीसिस आए हैं, आई थिंक अगर उसको बहुत सीरियसली देखें सेल्फ प्लेजरिज्म वाला पार्ट, तो मुश्किल हो जाएगा. बट अभी जैसे हम लोग शुरू कर रहे हैं रिसर्च, तो वी कैन कंसीडर दिस, बिकॉज देयर मे बी एट ए स्टेज वेयर द यूनिवर्सिटी मेक्स अनदर रूल. You cannot have as it is what you have published. You need to have the reformulation, and of course जो आप डेटा है उसको तो आप कुछ नहीं करोगे, डेटा तो आपको एज इट इज प्रेजेंट करना ही है, बट एनालिसिस पार्ट एंड लिटरेचर रिव्यू पार्ट मे बी revised so that a kind of freshness and also a kind of improvisation is seen in the presentation, right? And that is not difficult. I think that can be done. So any other observation, any other query? तारिक अहमद ने लिखा है, क्या it depends on the condition whether there is that much trust that you can say yes, that person wants my well-being. हाँ, अगर आप इसको ट्रस्ट को अगर आप कंडीशनल बनाते हैं तो आप उसको सोचिए, इस पे थोड़ा और डिस्कशन करेंगे आपको क्लैरिफाई करने के लिए। ये कंडीशनल नहीं हो सकता है, दूसरा का इंटेंशन गलत है ये आप कह नहीं सकते हैं। और इसका सबसे बड़ा जो एविडेंस है वो आप खुद ही हैं। आप
सर,
जो सोचते हैं,
हमारी क्लास यहाँ
हम-
निकल सकते हैं?
हाँ बिल्कुल, मैं अटेंडेंस मार्क कर दिया हूँ, एक बार और कर देता हूँ क्योंकि अभी कुछ लोग नए ज्वाइन किए हैं। तो ठीक है, यहाँ पर रुकते हैं और जो भी क्वेश्चंस हैं आप रखिए नोट करके, और नेक्स्ट क्लास में हम उसी क्वेश्चन से शुरू करेंगे। और नेक्स्ट क्लास में जो ग्रुप 3 है, आई थिंक उनको पब्लिक अपना वो तैयार रखना चाहिए प्रेजेंटेशन।
सर आप नेक्स्ट असाइनमेंट कब मेल करेंगे?
इसको पहले कर लीजिए, फिर हम
जी।
और करते हैं।
ठीक है सर।
ये जो आज प्रेजेंटेशन है इसको थोड़ा सा और अच्छा बना लीजिए, जो क्वेश्चंस पूछे गए इस सब के बारे में कुछ रिस्पांस उसमें अगर रिफ्लेक्ट होता है तो अच्छा रहेगा।
जी सर।
So shall I then call off?
थैंक यू सर।
Yes, sir.
Okay then, bye, take care.